listening to the Gettin Salty Experience podcast.
Away we go. Look who we got sitting here. Wow, we're trying to test out the chemistry. Roofy's away tonight, so who do we got sitting in? My man G to the Onzo. What's up, fella?
How are we doing? How you doing?
Well, I'm doing. I like that hat you're going on. I got going on there, fella. Your whole
trying to get into the,
the whole little buff cave you got over there.
Well, yeah, sure. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
A lot of family photos in the background.
No, it looks like buff shit you got. I don't know. It could be.
Well, there is some stuff back there, but yeah. The buff stuff is actually this way, which I can't. My desk is right here. So, but all the buff shit, the helmets and stuff down the back wall here. Maybe one day I'll move some stuff around.
So we got two heavy hitters, bro. Because you know what this is? This is the only podcast in the world that brings the Firehouse Kitchen Table and all these salty senior guys with all of this information right to you wherever you are. Whether at the firehouse, you're at home, you're hanging out with your old lady, wherever you are watching the show, bro. We're bringing it to you tonight, and we are bringing you the beginnings of FDNY scuba. You do scuba?
Scuba, Ruben.
Yeah, bro. This is the one. We got two senior Rescue 1 men on the show tonight, and I'm excited, bro. Is this the first time you've ever met Mr. Hashagen?
Me? Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's my first time.
What do you do? You dozing off already, bro? First time?
No, I thought somebody else in the room there. No.
No, I'm talking to you.
I was pretending I was frozen.
Yeah, you got the same internet as Hank, bro.
No, I wasn't. I'm good. I got that damn booster thing. So if I do fade out, let me know. But I hooked up that Wi-Fi extender to prevent that shit from happening.
All right. Sounds good to me, bro. So before we get started, you guys all know about the super chat. If you want to ask either one of these superstars tonight, hit us up in the super chat, and we will get your question on. Throw us a couple of shekels so Gonzo can get some more FDNY stuff. What do you got? You got a Gettin Salty shirt on tonight, bro? Which one?
I do. Yes, sir.
Look at that. Yep, this show is brought to you by Gettin Salty Apparel. You want to get any kind of Gettin Salty Apparel, go to gettinsaltyapparel.com. We got mugs. We got some
keychains.
Look at this baby right here. You don't get the whiskey that's in here, but you definitely do get. Look at all of that. You're prepared. Cigar cutters. You got box key openers. You got shirts. You got koozies. You want to buy a gift for a firefighter in your family? Get it.
Don't leave this hanging. We got the little nail clipper thing.
Show them how it works.
Yeah, no. There we go. Bring that bad boy around. I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go.
Look at that. The nail clipper comes out the bottom. Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff.
You can get this on an airplane, by the way, because I got this and the axe on the airplane. They patted me down the whole thing, but then they let me get on the plane with it.
How much did you pay for that?
Oh, a few shekels.
You did?
No.
It might be a free out. We can't say that. If Roofy's watching, Roofy's out in.
He's buying cows.
He's buying cows out in the middle of the country. You know what I mean? He's doing some stuff, doing some hunting stuff, laying the hunting stuff groundwork. He'll be back on Thursday where we have a big super show coming on as well. Another one with two heavy hitters. But before we get any further to this, let's producer Bob, if you will, please pull up our first sponsor, New Jersey Fire.
Established in 1930 and under the current ownership since 1987, the New Jersey Fire Equipment Company handles a complete line of fire department equipment and supplies. Headquartered in Greenbrook, the company operates full 3M Scott service facilities in Ridgefield Park and Toms River, staffed by 10 fully authorized Scott certified technicians with a fleet of 6 fully equipped service vans. All New Jersey fire technicians and sales representatives are active or retired firefighters, officers or chief officers, career and volunteer. They understand the business and the importance of their work. New Jersey Fire has represented Scott since Earl Scott entered the SCBA business at the end of World War II. Among other leading manufacturers represented by New Jersey Fire are Globe and Firedex Turnout Gear, Mercedes Hose, Task Force Tips and Akron Brass, Hygenol, Firehooks, Arctic Compressors, MSA Carnes Helmets, ChemGuard Foam, Alkalite and Duo Safety Ladders, BA face shield protectors, Truckman's Choice saws, Grove's gear racks and washer dryers, Supervac fans, RPI, Streamlight, and many others. A New Jersey incorporated and based company, sales and service are limited to the state of New Jersey. Find us now at www.njfe.com. That's www.njfe.com.
And thank you, Producer Bob. So listen, all you guys out there, tune in, listen carefully. The information you're going to get from these two gentlemen, because they were there almost from the onset of the training and going online as rescue divers. So let's bring him in here. Hank Molle of Rescue One and Paulie Hashagen, Rescue One.
All right. Welcome.
Good evening, Leatherhead Nation.
Thank you for coming on tonight, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Here's a little cheers for you fellas tonight.
My pleasure, as always.
Before, of course, we get started, we dive into this. Producer Bob, let's get patriotic. And let's do a little Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent day. All right, let's dive right in, shall we?
No pun intended.
No pun intended. We got a timeline, which is making this real easy. Paul sent us over a timeline, so let's start working off that FDNY scuba diving. Take it away, Mr. Hashagen. Back to September 15th of 58.
Okay, yeah. Even before the fire department officially had divers or were thinking about it, you have to remember, right after World War II ended, Jacques Cousteau had developed underwater breathing apparatus, scuba diving equipment. And the hardest thing he had to do was get the regulator to work at different depths. And if I remember correctly, he did that while in France, under the very nose of the Germans, who didn't exactly know what he was doing. He was developing that stuff on his own. And then after the war, he started marketing it. So there was a young firefighter, a young high school student who was a swimmer named Tom Bonamo from Staten Island, who went to a swim meet and saw an advertisement for a lecture being given about underwater accomplishments. So he goes and he meets Jacques Cousteau, who is still relatively unknown in the world. He falls in love with the idea, talks Cousteau into selling him equipment, and he ends up being one of the first people. He's buying it on time. He's paying him off a little at a time. Imagine this guy ends up being a world famous person, and here's Tom, I'll give you $10 now and $5 tomorrow to get this scuba equipment, because he just wants to go diving. And then years later, he gets in the fire department, but he's already an accomplished sport diver. And he's in Engine 31 downtown in Manhattan. But people knew about the diving because he would telling anybody because it was so interesting. And then in 1958, in September, there was a bridge in New Jersey that went up and down, and it allowed trains to go across. But if a big ship came by, the bridge would lift up and the ship would go under and then it'd go back down. Unfortunately, there was a locomotive coming with a bunch of cars on it with passengers. It was a commuter train. And the guy who was driving it went through the stop signs and drove the train off the raised up bridge, and it plunged into the water in Bayonne there. So the Jersey Fire Department shows up. They don't have anything to do. They figure, oh, we'll call New York. Maybe they can help. New York gets there, and really there's nothing they can do. But somebody remembers Tom Bonamo back in Staten Island has dive equipment. So the story he told me, he was out cutting his lawn, and the phone rings in his house. His wife answers the phone, asks who it is. They said, it's the fire commissioner. We'd like to talk to Tom. Now, I don't know how it is in other fire departments, but if you're at home in New York City and the fire commissioner calls up, it's usually a very bad thing if you're a firefighter. But this happened to be a good thing. He asked him, do you still have the dive equipment? He said, yes. He said, go to where the ferry boat comes in and a fireboat will pick you up. We have a job. So off he went, and he went to this dive job, and we have that picture. It used to be the front cover of WNYF of the trains hanging off into the water. He went there, and every dive that he went down, he pulled somebody else out of this submerged train. Sadly, nobody made it, but he was doing something nobody even thought was possible before, and that's attempting to rescue people that are trapped underwater. So that was in 58. He goes back to the fire department, does a couple other little things, and eventually John O'Hagan, who was the captain of Rescue 1, made sure that he brought Benamo over to Rescue 1. I think partially because of the diving, but he was a good firefighter also, just to add that to the possible things that the fire department could do. And also historically, because I like to get it right, we really got a slow start in diving. I believe it was 1960 that the Los Angeles Fire Department organized their divers for the first time to fight pier fires and do all these other things, because you have to realize pier fires is the whole reason it started. You get this fire underneath the pier deck. Sometimes there's concrete on top of it, and it's just it's a bear to try to cut apart and get water underneath. So Los Angeles was doing it way before we were doing it, and that was one of the things we kept saying, come on, if they can do it, we can do it. So but things fall on deaf ears, and the same reason that we talked about why it took so long for Rescue 1 to get formed back in 1915, when they talked about it in 1912 at the Equitable fire. It comes down to money. They didn't want to spend the money. So then a couple of years go by, and in 1963, a bus goes off the road at Welfare Island out in the middle of the East River, and the fire department gets called. And in that one picture, you can see that's Marty Kniff, who was also, I think he was in 7 truck at the time. He was a sport diver like Tom Benamo. I believe Tom Benamo is also in the water at this one. And they bring their personal dive equipment, and they go in the water. But the first guys that actually went in the water, if we have that other picture, is the guy from Rescue 2, who used basically the confined space equipment to go underwater. He used the old Scott 2 or Scott 1 equipment with a tethered hose and just put on like an exposure kind of suit for going into some kind of ammonia leak or whatever, and just went in the water. The guy had a background in diving, and just being a can-do kind of guy, he figures, I'm going to go down there and give it a shot. So all these things kept happening, but we really didn't have anything where we could get anywhere with it. They were doing things, but it was too late. Things were too slow. And then in July of 1981, there was a bad pier fire downtown Manhattan. And again, the creosote smoke and all that stuff just lingers over the city. It's making people ill. It's screwing up traffic. It's just a nightmare. And the guys from Rescue 1, the captain is talking to the deputy chief down there, and they're pushing. Why? LA has a dive team for 20 years. Why can't we go in the water and put these fires out? And that chief grabbed the ball and went downtown with it and talked him into buying some equipment, and let's see what we can do. And that was really the first part of where they went and bought some gear, and it wasn't formalized yet, but it was just starting. It was like intramural almost, It was just starting. The equipment was there.
Did the PD have anything before we did? Did they have? I mean, like,
well, they had divers, I believe. I don't know when they started, but they were not in a rescue mode. Their divers in the very beginning,
investigation mode, like
great divers. It was mostly evidence recovery.
right.
Evidence recovery,
They were
right.
going into a muddy river to find a gun or a knife, and they were doing it. I mean, we worked with them. Hank and I worked with their the dive team divers. Certainly the next generation or so, but they were among the best divers I've ever seen. I mean, these guys, we got a taste of it working in black water, but we're looking for a person. They're going through his pocket looking for the change. I mean, they're doing these, minute searches. So, but they were really Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, just for evidence stuff. They get a call, a guy threw the water in the drink over here. Let's go see if we can find it. And then Lee Ielpi from Rescue 2 was January of 83, went into a submerged van down by India Street and started pulling people out. So this was the first quasi-official kind of FDNY actual diving. And it was a successful dive. He was able to get the people out of the van. And then shortly after that, they said, well, we better make this official. And then they figured, well, if you're going to be able to go under piers to put fires out and do this other stuff, you have to learn everything about scuba diving and how to rescue each other. So it turned from this little thing of going with a hose under the pier to this big giant thing. But luckily it started out small because I was in the very, very beginning of it. I think I became a diver within the first year of the program when it started. I didn't get the first official training, but by the time they started bringing in the heavyweight instructors, I was there for all of that. So all of a sudden, the world was changing. But
Right.
You have to remember, it was wetsuits and sport gear, regulator in your mouth, regular face piece, fins. You know, you're like any sport diver. But
You would think, I don't understand why it would take so long when you have 5 boroughs all surrounded by water and with no availability for to save anybody in the water. Rescue diving. It took up until the 80s to put something online. It amazes me.
And even if they pulled people out of the water, nobody thought of resuscitating them. There's pictures,
Right.
I've seen films and stuff. They throw somebody on the little diving platform on the back of a boat. The guy's just laying there. Everybody's looking at him. Like nobody had an idea in those days, especially if you're underwater 15 to 20 minutes, you're dead. That's what they thought. They, first aid was throwing, digging your grave. That was it,
But don't you think Paul, don't you think that dive job that you have chronicled in Chicago, where that little boy was pulled out after, they say at least might have been 20 minutes or 40 minutes. They don't know how long he was in the water.
Right.
The fact
No,
that
the one that's the one. There it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Now the story on that one is that there was a TV crew. They were filming, for the background of the weather. They wanted to show snow and people sleigh riding and all that, so they could tell them the weather the next day. And in those days, the cameras, it was a 2-person camera team. The cameraman had a big cable that went to the recording and battery equipment that was on the other guy's shoulder, and there was a long snake of 2 or 3 cables that were hooked together. And they're out there filming, and this father goes flying by with a little boy holding onto his back on a sled, and they're doing fine. And they hit the water, which was ice, and the weight of them broke the ice, and down they go. And the father pops back up, and the kid doesn't. So the camera crew did the smart thing. They turned the camera off, and they lassoed the father with the cable and pulled him out of the water, and they were able to send somebody to call the fire department. Now, this guy was a diver for their Air Sea rescue team. Exactly how it worked in those days, I don't know. But he arrived and went down. So like Hank was saying, it's either 20 minutes or 40 minutes, somewhere in between. And they pulled this kid out. And as you saw in that picture, he's limp. That kid, basically he's a little rag doll. But they just started working on him. And what we learned later from that is don't try to warm the body up and all the rest of it. Just give them CPR and give them oxygen. And if anything, they use warm oxygen to warm up the core first and slowly allow you to come back. People were worried about your frostbitten fingers and everything, and they were killing you, worrying about your extremities.
Right.
So
that's when everybody found out about the mammalian reflex.
Right.
Supposedly, when your body was subjected to that severe coldness, there's some reflex, I guess, that shuts your windpipe down or whatever, so the water doesn't permeate your lungs, and then like Paul was saying, they do the core warming where they try to warm you from the inside out. And the story with this lad was they were able to bring him back, and it took some time, but he fully recovered. He had no brain damage. Again, because supposedly with this mammalian reflex, it keeps the vital organs, including your brain and your body, with the blood, and it stays oxygenated in there. So again, I'm not a doctor, but that's
No, it shunts everything to the vital organs.
Right.
You know, the colder the water it is, the greater the chance of surviving.
So the colder the water, the younger the person. They also say if you go in head first for whatever reason, I don't know.
And fresh water has better results than salt water. So there are different factors, but that particular job, I think, gave our job, the guys arguing for it, more credence and saying, look, besides the under-pier firefighting, you can save a life. You don't have to get to this person within 2 minutes, you know, depending on like the temperature of the water and stuff. There is a chance of finding these people. And I think that's what gave the final push for the money to start coming in.
Right. So always about the money, ain't it?
Well, it is. And
yeah,
this was right after we started. We started, what was the date? Let me get the date right. July 20th, 1983. Rescue 1 and 2 became officially an in-water firefighting team. And that we had the training and everything else. And then shortly after that, the Chicago incident happened. And it really changed how we were looking at it. That we never lost that feeling of urgency, that we wanted to go and, you know, do it faster, do it better. And that's where they got Walt Hendrick to come and train us. And Walt was a former Navy SEAL, and he was all about getting ready as fast as you can. He did all these drills with us. We went out to this pier in Queens between the Throgs Neck Bridge and the Whitestone Bridge.
Whitestone, right.
And we did the pier was horrible. It should have been condemned, but that was all part of the adventure, is getting to the water. But yeah, that's the ugly little pier that we were working off this contraption at the end of the pier. But he put us through the paces there. I mean, you really got a lot of confidence. He was impressed with us, with our ability to function underwater in black water. But that's because we were so used to wearing regular Scott masks and doing firefighting. You know, you're doing half of everything by feel. So the diving, to me anyway, I think Hank would say the same thing. It felt natural.
Yeah, to a point. I mean, there were times I felt a little intimidated, which I can get into. But I mean, like you said, he when he was done with you with us training, and Paul, you were in the first group. I got there in '86, but he was still doing the training because I went through when Rescue 5 was coming online. I mean, you ended up like when I got there, you had to have Captain O'Flaherty said you had to have your open water 1, which I had gotten with Timmy Higgins. But when I finished with Butch, it was you had open water 2, you had rapid deployment search and rescue certification, you had black water certification, and like you said, he put you through the paces at that. You know, at that dive institute, if I remember correctly, there was a sunken van, a sunken boat, and he, you know, you went down in this black water, and he was doing harassment drills. He was shutting your air tank off, pulling your mask off from behind you, you know, and anything, you know, that could go wrong, like if you got entangled and stuff. So when you got done, you felt pretty confident in your abilities. You know?
Without a doubt.
So it was after that, after he left, was it all in-house training, or was it, how did the training? Yeah,
eventually. That was another thing that we did. Is, let me look on the date. I had that little list, but we, I think it was sometime after some of our dives, they decided to do it in-house, and we had a training stint, and Butch Hendricks again taught us, and everybody went to Rescue 5, and I think it was 2 weeks to become dive instructors, certified dive instructors, and it was educational methodology and everything. I mean, you had to go and learn how to teach new divers, just the same as if you were doing it at the YMCA or whatever, and then get specific. He wanted you to be able to walk out of there and teach anybody how to dive, but specifically the fire department. So it was one of the most meaningful training things I ever went through, because it taught you a certain degree of performance. If you're showing somebody, like we used to do at Ditch and Don. You go to the bottom of the pool, take all your equipment off, go back up to the surface, get a breath of air, go back down and put all your equipment on. And he wanted you not only to do it, but to demonstrate it. So you did everything exaggerated. You showed the other students, because the idea was you would take all the students in, sit on the bottom in the deep end, and I'm going to show you the skill you're going to have to perform. So you go down the deep end, do the breath holding. Here's my fin. I'm putting it on. Here's this, here's that. So it really turned it into a performance kind of thing, which is the best way to teach. You have to be able to show that you can do it. And that built your confidence up so well that, like Hank was saying, we've already been through the harassment and all that. Like that picture right there, that's a little bit later, because now we have face pieces that are protecting us. In the beginning, with just a regulator in your mouth, I mean, the dives were successful, without a doubt. We were putting out pier fires. We were rescuing people that were underwater, but guys started getting sick. They were getting ambiosis from amoebas in the water. They were still dumping raw sewage into the Hudson. You know, the waters were horrible around New York. We used to kid, you know, my father used to razz me about diving. And I said, well, you go in the tropics where you can see fish, and I'm jumping into chocolate pudding up here in the East River.
Right. You see Coney Island whitefish, you know.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different, but eventually we got the equipment so we didn't get sick. Right. And then, thank God, they started cleaning the river up when they put some the outflow equipment upstream in the Hudson to clean out the sewer water. And now you can go fishing there, and it's, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, things are like they should be.
Yeah. So you guys were diving in raw sewage.
We were.
There were streets where the raw sewage, you know, the pipe was actually dumping into, you know, and if you had to respond in that area, you were going in. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Like I said in the beginning, even when they started the team, like Paul was saying, we were in wetsuits with the bite pieces and just a regular, you know, mask on. And like I remember my first dive was in February of '87, and it was off Pier A at the tip of Manhattan. And it was a cold February night, and I was a diver, and Carl Fieldmauser was in Rescue One. He was a senior guy to me. Paul, what was he, like a demo diver in the Navy or something?
Yeah, he had a lot of diving background. I used to train with him, and that's one of the reasons he got to the company was his dive background. He was very well schooled in scuba diving. Yeah.
So we end up normally we would not get on. The Coast Guard wouldn't take us on one of their small boats, like I call them a cutter, like a 28 or a 30 footer. But we end up on their boat, and in the water we go. And I'm not in the water like 4 minutes, and the diaphragm of my bite piece freezes, and now it's free flowing. So I'm losing all this air, you know, and there was no communications then. You were on a line, and I'm like,
tugs.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't want to come up because I don't want to leave Carl alone. But I guess they were seeing all the air bubbles at the top, and they ended up just, you know, pulling me up, and you know, it ended up being unfounded. You know, there was nobody there when they said there was. But I mean, you know, that was the kind of primitive equipment. And believe me, with going in a wetsuit, you froze your rear end off in that water.
Oh, without a doubt.
It was like, you know, it was miserable. You know.
How did Rescue One operate? Who was that lead diver? Who was the backup? And you guys probably had other guys backed up, right? 2 other guys ready to get.
Well, in the very beginning, they hoped to have 2 divers every night, but it wasn't official. That took a little while before they realized that you're going to have to, because we didn't have that many guys certified. You know, they tried their best, but then people come and go. They get promoted. Somebody's sick. They're on vacation. Right. It's hard to do that every single night. But eventually, it didn't take that long. But they got to the point where they were sure there was going to be 2 divers every night, because a lot of things were happening all at the same time. When this was just before SOC came in, because we were still getting detailed out to the 9th Battalion. If there was 6 guys working in Rescue One, you might find yourself in 35 truck. So then it became, well, wait a minute. You're a diver. I don't want to send you to go work in 35 tonight. I'll send him. And now that guy's going, wait a minute. I just got detailed last time. And it starts turning into a pile of shit. So the guys understood that, yeah, you want to be able to do that, but is a dive job going to happen tonight? Why do I have to keep going? So.
But Paul, if you remember, I think the way that like O'Flaherty rectified that was when you got certified, if there were senior guys in one that didn't want to dive, they didn't have to dive.
Right.
So that limited the amount of divers you had. Right after that, like the next crop of guys that came in, like me and Ray Brown, besides your firefighting background, you had to have your open water 1 to get into the company.
Right.
So at that point, everybody coming into the company at least had open water 1, and then he could send you to Hendricks School, or later on, when we were doing our own training.
No, but that was just my point. That just like
Right.
the whole dive program, it was an attrition thing where in the beginning it was bumpy. They figured it out. It was great when all these new guys are coming, and I could understand that somebody, how much of what we do, especially in those days, was diving. It was mostly fires and then, other emergencies in Manhattan. But when we started getting called more and more and the thing started working, it seemed the better we got at it, the more runs there were. I don't know if more accidents happened or people were better aware of it or we got a better dispatch. But all of a sudden, after like that first helicopter grab that I was involved in 85 in the East River, all of a sudden we're doing stuff. And then Dave Van Voss makes a really good grab in Brooklyn, and he pulls 5 kids out of a van. I think teenagers, and one lady lives, the young lady. That's amazing stuff when you can just go rolling out in the middle of the night and go start pulling people out of a van, and somebody lives. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah, there's Dave, and all of a sudden we were on the map, and things started going the right way. Now they're talking about. They're bringing guys in that have a start to know what they're doing. People understand it. We're getting slightly better equipment, more training. Then friggin' Geraldo Rivera comes and he wants us to do an interview. Yeah. So I go over to Brooklyn and we're at the quarters of Rescue 2 and he interviews us for a couple of hours. We go through all this stuff. We tell him all these things. And I think Dave Van Voss was on for 10 seconds on the show. It turned into a dive cop thing. It just, they had better footage and scarier stories talking to the cops. So we hit the cutting room floor, but it didn't matter because we had been making the grabs. Right. And if you remember, Hanky, it got so after the second helicopter and a couple of good grabs guys were making off piers, the police department had that pier team.
The east side and the west side pier units.
Yeah.
What, they would just sit on the pier?
No, they had a van. And guys drove around, sometimes wearing their wetsuits, just patrolling, waiting for a water emergency to happen to beat the fire department. That was their whole mission.
And they had the funding, so they had within 2 days.
As always,
they had complete gear. And like Paul said, they were up and down the West Side Highway, one team, and the other was up and down the FDNY Drive over there. On the East River Drive.
We couldn't get straps for our fins if they broke, and they got guys on overtime driving around in a van to beat us into the water.
Yeah. You know what I was going to say, Paul, about that? It was probably a growing thing for the dispatchers too, because they had no idea who to send or if you got.
Well, that was a big thing that we always did, right, Hank? Yeah. The bosses were smart. We quite often went to the dispatchers with donuts and coffee. Hi, pal. How you doing? Good to see you.
This is what we can do. Yeah.
And you could see what they were up against. And most of them were really, really into it. I mean, they are some of the most dedicated people I met on the job. And, all of a sudden you could hear a click in the middle of the night. They're giving you a buzz even before they're not even working it through the computer. And somebody's giving you a shout on the voice alarm. Get going.
Right. But I also think that the diving that we did, again, this is prior to SOC. That was one of a few things that started 13 David, because you'd be responding as divers. The chiefs had no idea what your capabilities were. So now if you're a chief and, it's like, you're going to do what with what? And, it's like, whoa, put the brakes on. So 13 David was the preemptive to special operations. Right. And 13 David was basically a captain that had rescue experience, and he was the liaison. He had a driver, and they would respond on multiple alarms and on dive jobs, so they could liaise with the chief and say, Chief, this is what we can do for you here. These guys are trained to do this. So that was, I think, the diving was one of the reasons why that started.
Without a doubt. And I remember going to a show and tell. Once in a while, they would send us down to a division or whatever, and all the battalion chiefs would come on a Sunday, and we'd do a show and tell of our truck just to show them all the stuff we had. Because every rank, chiefs ranks like everybody else, there's always new guys. So they don't know everything unless you worked in a rescue company. You don't know everything that's on that truck. And now diving is new. And I remember showing all this equipment down there. We're down in the 1st Division. And his chief asked me, oh, that's really nice you have all this stuff. Did you guys buy that yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem was it was on the department order in 83 or 85, whenever the hell it was that we became a dive team. That was one line.
Right.
Like they didn't send there was no YouTube channel about what the rescue company could do. You couldn't go look it up. You had to, you had to see what they could do, and you had to trust that they actually knew what they were doing. And I could imagine just how crazy it was for a fire chief to be standing there, and now he's responsible for you, and he has no idea what you're doing.
Yep. Right.
So now it's like he's looking at that officer, man, you better not kill these guys. But time after time, we did a great job for them.
Yep.
What year was it roughly you guys got fully functional? Was it early 90s?
No, I don't know if any of us are fully functional today.
That's why we were so good. We don't function that good up here.
No, Gons, I think for the first day of training, once we were done with the first round of training, we were good to go. It was instinctive to us. We knew what to do. The chiefs weren't sure, but we knew what we were doing. And then the pier firefighting, which was the whole reason we started doing that in the first place, that was amazing. Because if you look at some of these big old giant piers they have in New York City, that you have to go back to when the city was in its heyday, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There were piers that ran all the way down the Hudson, around the bottom, and all the way up the East River. And now you go, there's hardly any piers. Yeah, most of them burned down.
Yeah.
And you get a good fire, deep-sea fire underneath there. The fire boats couldn't get to them. They'd take a little punt, that little boat. They'd go under there with a hose maybe. We put out fires under the piers with hose lines. It was hard work, but, it was amazing. And we had one that we have pictures of. We could talk about it. If we want to stay with the chronology, we should talk about some of the earlier stuff first. But I did a job where Vinny Dunn was the deputy chief, and we saved millions and millions of dollars. 3 guys in the water, me, Bruce, and Harvey. We got our asses kicked. I got line of duty. What the hell would they call it? I couldn't talk from the smoke. But, it was all, your eyes were squeaking. I could barely even talk. And you're sick. Line of duty.
All the creosote.
It was horrible.
Yeah,
it was horrible. But we,
right.
We saved the day. And
did you happen? Speaking of Vinny Dunn, I posted the thumbnail on Facebook, and he made a comment, and he wrote he was there the day that you had the helicopter crash. He wrote that was one of the most proudest days I ever had in the FDNY.
Wow.
Yeah, Vinny Dunn. I was like, holy shit! I didn't even know he was on our fan
I tell
page.
you what, of every
that's good, man.
Of every chief officer I ever worked with, I think my hat is off to him the most. That was the most. Well, there's been a couple really good ones, but I think the deputy chiefs, he was the best deputy chief I ever worked with. That he was so into the fire department, and the coolest part is he was into the men. He cared about every single guy.
He still does. When he was on,
never about him.
He was a regular guy with us.
Yep.
Yeah,
a prince.
All right,
one of my favorite people.
I'm going to throw this out there to the both of you because you've been on both sides of it. Okay. Now the squads, we trained to be tenders. That's it. Backup tenders. They did some training. We went through pool sometimes, and we did some divings in the pool, but they never certified the squads for diving. Do you think that's a good move, a bad move? You think about us fighting with the cops to get that work. Now, if you have 7 more companies that are 8 more companies, now you got Squad Ocha trained in diving. Why don't you think they bring the squads up to diving status?
Probably. I'll go first, I guess, because I did both. I think that part of the reason for the squads getting the fire department getting the funding for the squads, came because of terrorism and after the '93 bombing, and I think the grants, the way they were written, was that these squads that they were going to put online had to have the hazmat training for weapons of mass destruction and be able to deal with mass casualties because and the big thing was if you had a biohazard in the subways and stuff, if you remember all that training.
Yeah, and who they were going to get to do that? Nobody, unless they threw the rest of the stuff to you.
Well, right. So exactly. So you basically, and it worked.
Right.
It worked. It got all of us there, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing I liked least about the squad duties was the hazmat, but I mean, it had to be done, and we got trained in it, and that was an expensive endeavor. Although I believe they got funding for it, I don't think they had the funding to get us scuba trained and scuba gear, and
but it's 25 years later now.
It's very different now up there, though.
I can't speak for now. I mean, I know there seems to be plenty of money because there's
right. But I'm asking you, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea to train them in school in rescue diving? This is where his rescue blue comes out, guys.
I don't know. I don't know if you justify it with the. I think the water rescues are there, and you have the companies that do like the surface rescues.
They do the swift water. They do the ice rescue.
Right.
They do all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you take the territorial out of it, and you just do what we're there to do. Does it make sense? I guess what his question would say. Like I said, take the territorial stuff out of it.
Well, look, the more people that are trained, the merrier. Mm-hmm. So I guess to answer your question, sure, it would be great. Do I think you're going to see it? I don't.
Yeah,
but
I would go with that. I think probably you won't see it, but I totally agree. And one of the things when we started the rescue school, when Terry Hatton and Phil Ruvolo were the instigators behind the rescue school, there was little things going on they were trying. But when they got promoted to be captains, there was a thing where they take you offline for a year. Here's a thing, go do it.
Right.
And they pitched the rescue school, a technical rescue school, and they were told, go ahead. And we started in a little trailer.
A little trailer, right?
A little trailer. But I tell you what, those were the best times. I wish I had taken better pictures. It was amazing to be on the beginning of anything. And they asked me to write the curriculum for the diving to familiarize because you got to remember, it was only Rescue 1 and 2 that were divers. And then all the other rescue companies would show up, but they didn't even have the equipment. So it took a long time for 3 and 4 and 5 to get online. I think 5 came first before there was 3 and 4. But now even their divers are working. I know a guy in 3 made a couple of good grabs up there and got a medal for doing good underwater stuff. Underwater stuff is so weird. When you talk to the average firefighter, I remember talking to firefighters in New York City, and they go, yeah. I don't know why you get a medal for doing something like that. It's just, they don't think it's dangerous because there's no flames.
You're by yourself.
I gently remind them, if you're 30 feet or even 20 feet underwater, there's no window to jump out.
Right. There's no rope to slide out.
If shit goes wrong, you're done unless there's another diver can come and get you. Do you know how to dive? You got equipment? You can't get me.
You're solo.
And we've had accidents where at the Flight 800, one of the guys got banged up pretty bad by a rapid ascent. We're lucky that most of our dives happen in relatively shallow water, and we can get to the area and do it fast. That's why we can do it. All these other diving is so friggin' complicated. The more depth you put in, the more time it takes, the trickier it gets, the more dangerous it is. and the less effective it is because of all those other things. Where we're in the perfect spot, those rivers aren't that deep. There's so much, especially now with the cell phones. You know, you could be on your way to the scene. They're giving you live video. You know, it's crazy. But you know, it's an amazing thing, and I'm glad all the rescues are on. And yeah, maybe someday the squads will be there. But the other outgrowth of this is the surface rescue capability across companies all throughout the city. There's guys that carry surfboards on their rigs and everything. That's amazing, man. That's totally that's fantastic.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you see what John Norman just wrote? Did you see
Curran and George Krischer started the rescue school in the BC
Valzana, right? 92.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was saying. There was. Thank you, John. There were parts of it before Terry and Phil got there because I remember going to it. And Pete Valenzano, what another great guy! You want to talk about people that just knew their stuff? I was in there talking to him one day, and he's getting calls from like in the middle of the United States. They want to talk. We got a really bad kind of fire here. This is what's burning. What kind of foam do we use? And he's going, oh yeah, just use that. Just use it. No, I had no idea. I had, pretty little knowledge in that area. And, he was a really good guy. George Crucier, my hat's off to George, always has been, an ultimate rescue man. There's a guy that was versed in everything. He was a good diver, a super firefighter. And they started the thing going. And then just like the dive team, we started out with little rubber suits and it turned into all this stuff, just like SOC and everything else. They just, Rescue One first started in 1915 in a little Cadillac touring car. And now look at the rigs. You could probably put 3 touring cars inside the truck now. So it's fun.
Yeah. Just on a different note, Kev, just to go back to what you said about tenders, you can't overstate how important the tenders are, and a good tender is worth his weight in gold.
Without a doubt.
And you only can appreciate that if you're a rescue diver.
Right.
Because a tender that knows the equipment, knows the order in which you're going to need the equipment, can help you get dressed in certain time. If you're not doing the back of the rig, but even there they help. And once you get to your objective, is going to be, he's your lifeline to the surface. Whether it's he's holding the rope, whether it's tugs or whether it's with communications, he also has to know he's piloting you. You don't just jump in the water haphazard and start swimming around. We actually have a couple of specific search patterns, especially in black water. It's not like in the Bahamas where you're looking at and seeing 100 feet. You basically if you have 2 feet of visibility, once you hit the bottom and stir it up, you got no visibility, and that's how most of it is. And they have to know how much line they're going to give you to go out, and you have to face the line, stop and face the line. They're going to talk to you, and they're going to make you go left or right if they're doing a half moon, or if they're doing a pier walk. So it's a very important job that they probably don't get enough credit for.
Right.
But it really is an important job.
Right. They can't take it lightly either. Like I said, I've been on a few rescues down here where we've had that, and the line tenders have such a valuable job. Like you just said, as far as communicating, get that briefing in, and just have that common understanding between the two of you, between the diver and him, as far as how this operation is going to go down. That's critical.
Right.
Hank and I have been to jobs where, especially in the volleys, where if you got there and you didn't have a good tender, if I was going in the water, I would just tie a knot around the tender's hand, the kid who was going to be my tender, and said, "You're an anchor. Don't move." And I take the rope with me and do the tender's part underwater, because on the surface, you're trying to draw these like little half circles, crescents. To go out. Usually we wanted to go a little further because people's judgment is usually a little off. So you want to go further. And I'd rather find them on the way back than miss them by a foot, because I've got to search all the way in. You always search better coming towards the objective. So we send a person out. And then when you go in, when you start to drop, you kind of crescent down a little. So you want to send them out. It's a complicated thing. And we've gone to dive jobs where there were other divers, and God bless them, they're showing up, they're trying their best, but they weren't tethered, and they couldn't find the people. And they sent us adjacent, and we're doing our searches, we can't find anybody. And then we moved back where the other guys had just been, and we found the people. Boom, just like that. Nothing against them.
Mm-hmm.
That was their plan. Their plan didn't work. So hopefully by now they're tethered. But the whole idea about surface diving, you're going to come in and you're going to go find a needle in a haystack. It's not going to work. And there were even guys in the very, very beginning when we took the training, there were some guys that were seasoned divers on their own. And I don't mention names because it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
But they were fighting the idea of having a rope tied to them. And these were senior men. So, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And the good thing about Butch is then you're not going to get certified.
Right.
And I don't think
you carry a knife, right? Your divers will carry knives.
Yeah.
So if you have to, God forbid.
Right.
But then, going back to the, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say that it's a dick fight.
Right.
It's all it is.
We call it sword fighting.
Yeah.
So Darren DeFreeze, who I don't know why I'm answering this question because he's always making fun of me, but whatever, Darren. I hope you had your Geritol tonight. He wanted to know whether the divers have an RIT team, and
yes,
basically yes. It's for every diver that's in the water, he has a safety diver in the water, but waiting at the pier, fully dressed. The only thing is he's not sucking on his air if he needs it, And then later, if we have enough time, if we get into these dive jobs, when I can talk about the Staten Island job, where that came into effect.
Right. Well, it was important too because Hank helped me set up the Freeport team. I helped Wantor, I helped Island Park, I helped a whole bunch of different fire departments get themselves, and some of them are still going, God bless them. And that's one of the questions that always comes up, especially when you're limited on how many people you have. You always try to have a backup diver. And in the best case scenario, if you have 2 underwater, you want 2 on the surface. But I always felt that it was safe if you had just at least one guy on the surface. Because if this guy declares a Mayday, you bring the other guy up until the Mayday is resolved and then send him back down because he could always come across. But sometimes you're just stuck. And I mean, these are guidelines. Once in a while, you just got to jump in the water. I went to a dive job in Freeport, and the first guys that were there, it happened to be a night that Hank was making a firefighter rescue with Bruce on the Super Bowl night. And we get called, they're telling me later, oh, you should have been at work. It was a great, we had a great job. We rescued some guys. And I'm saying, oh, you should have been home because we were jumping in the canal. Freezing cold, Super Bowl night. Might have had a cocktail, but.
Allegedly.
But we get down to the end of the street and his headlights on in the water. And the dive team isn't there yet. But there's guys in Gumby suits and the cold water suits, but you can't get underwater in a Gumby suit. Because it's designed to keep you afloat.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. Sometimes you just got to jump in the water. They couldn't get under. I looked in the car real quick, got out, froze my ass off. Nobody's in the car. Let's go home. Should you do that as a dive team? No, you do that as an individual firefighter making a calculated decision. That's not a dive team operation.
The old risk benefit.
That's somebody. But I knew I was good. I got all these guys right on the surface. There's ambulances there. Everybody's there. All I got to do is get in and get out. And I froze my ass off. But nobody was in the car. And if they were, we had them. That's the thing. Right. So there's always somebody out there. Like I draw these cartoons, and if I put a character in a smoke condition and he doesn't have a face piece on, I get hate mail. or if they're too dirty because somebody got cancer. I mean, come on,
lighten up, Francis.
Right.
It's dangerous. All of this is dangerous. That's the whole point.
Paul, we got to give a disclaimer. A lot of times when we tell stories with alleged cheaters and stuff, we're the old school dinosaurs. So the way you do, you guys got to do things now. You're just going to hear the stories about how we used to do it and why we were glad we did it when we did it. So
Well, I tell you what, I stopped using the cheater. It was effective until it wasn't. Right. But I'd still jump in the water.
Right. What's a cheater?
I don't know
I
what you're
never heard
talking
of
about.
it.
Never
Never.
heard it.
It's
I only
first
heard about it.
heard of right now.
Somebody's asking the oldest thing you ever found and the funniest moment.
No,
ever
the
in
oddest
the
thing.
Oddest thing you found and funniest
Oh,
moment
the
in the water.
oddest thing you found
Odd.
and the funniest
And the
moment.
best rescue
Okay, you are,
stories.
man.
Well, we got a bunch of rescue stories. I
All
don't
right,
know.
we're
if
gonna
you
get to
want
the
tell them.
next. So this guy paid $20. What's the oddest thing you ever found in there and the funniest
I'll
moment?
give you a really good story about finding stuff, and it goes back, and hopefully it'll tickle this guy whether it answers his question exactly.
I like to be
Tommy Reichel was a Brooklyn firefighter that came to rescue one. He lived down in Island Park. One of the best firemen I ever met, and I still think of him and laugh all the time. It's just a great guy. We go down to Beach 8th Street. Remember we used to go there, Hank?
Yes, in Rockaway.
Right. So this is
Club.
part of our ongoing training. And Butch Hendricks is so impressed with us at this point. He's got us on the beach, and he is just telling us, you guys are so good. I know how good you are. And he takes his car keys and throws them in the water. And he says, I know that you guys are going to be able to find them. And I'm standing going, wow, I think he just went off his rocker, you know?
I think he just fucked up.
So Tommy Reichel's the first guy in, and I'm tending him. And he's going in, and now he's looking. He comes up, and he's going, I don't know. He's looking. We send another guy, and he's looking. I pull Tommy out. He's been in the water too long. Now Butch is starting to get frantic. He's walking back and forth. Butch is putting on equipment himself. The Navy SEAL's going to go find his keys. Tommy comes up to me when Butch isn't looking, opens up his BC, and says, I have the keys right here. And puts them back in his BC. And we waited till Butch went all the way out and came up for the first time, and Tommy's swinging him on.
There you go.
So Butch got a little taste of firehouse humor.
Welcome to the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
Welcome to the kitchen table, MFer. All right, who wants to tell the first story while we're on stories? Hank, you start off.
Well, do you want to look at what's the timeline? We'll have to pick, like, you want to do Pash, you want to do your helicopter job or what? What do you want to do first?
Yeah, well, we got pictures of it. I mean, yeah, it's
All right, let's go with the helicopter story. Set it up for us, Hash.
well, the amazing thing was that and those that have heard the story before, I apologize. We were over on 38th Street in the firehouse with 34 engine and 21 truck. We had moved in there after our quarters were destroyed in 1985. So we had a little tool room built, and they jammed everybody into this firehouse. We're getting along fairly well. And Jack Theobald and I were in the back in the tool room working on a saw. And we used to listen to Soupy Sales on the radio all the time. He was on NBC. He used to be on television when we were kids. So he was a comedian and had this, travel home and listen to their antics. And they tell you what the traffic and the weather and all that kind of stuff is. And for whatever reason, we weren't listening that day. But Jack and I religiously listened to this show. And all of a sudden, the house watch is yelling. There's a helicopter in the river. So out the door we go. John Driscoll, who was not a regular chauffeur, he's driving the truck. I get in the back. Me and George Crucier are the divers. Theobald's helping me get dressed. And we only have 5 or 6 blocks to go, 8 blocks tops. And we get there really quick. And the fence was knocked down by the helicopter. And it's next to the Intrepid. And if you look a little to the left, the circle line is there where the people come from around the world and they take you on the boat around Manhattan and everybody loves it. And there's some people standing there looking, but they're pointing, in the water. So John Driscoll, who you see in that photograph in the dark blue sweatshirt, and I told this story to his sons at John's funeral because he sadly passed away a few years ago. And John is not what I would call a swimmer. He could swim, but he wasn't like the first guy to want to go to the beach or any of that. He decided not to become a diver. But he was the first guy in the water. I mean, he's a rescue man. There's people in trouble. He's in the water. And he goes out, and I'm just putting my weight belt on. He had gone down this ladder, and this guys are holding a hook ladder by hand while they're trying to tie it off so we can get in the water. God bless you. It's 34 engine, 21 truck, 54 engine, 4 truck. they made this operation work. And I'm just starting to go down the ladder, and John Driscoll is yelling to me, "Paulie, I got it. What do you got?" I go swimming out to him with all my dive equipment. He says, "I'm standing on the rotor blade." Somehow he hit it or saw it. I didn't see it. So I go underwater. I follow him down. I follow the rotor blade down the collective or whatever the top part of that thing is. And I find where the cabin is. Now, the first thing you're going to think is, you're going to have to force a door. Firefighters are always worried about doors. You're going to be able to get in. Luckily, this one opens right up. And there's this man in front of me. And I know I always say the guy was blue, and then you look at the pictures, he's not. But that was my impression. He looked dead to me. He was like pale white or what. He didn't look good. I don't think anybody looks their best when they've been underwater any significant time.
Following a crash.
Yeah, they stop breathing. But I was able to cut his seatbelt off, and I take him out, and I give him to John. And that's the other picture you see. John, Tommy Baker's in the water, Jack Theobald, who I referenced earlier, because it was almost a change of tours. So, yeah, that's when I first came up. There's John, the first guy. And if you see the little line right there on the right, halfway up on the picture, that little white streak, that's part of the rotor that John found.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that from my vantage point, but he found it. And now you can see that's my head that's sticking up with the better mask on. The first rescue I made the year before, we had the pollution ingesting regular diving. This is a full face piece. So that's the second person. That's the reporter that I took out. But I handed the pilot off to John. That one. Other guys are jumping in the water, and they start bringing them back. And then I go back down, and I go back into the helicopter. And I get to the seat, and where I thought somebody else would be, they aren't there. She had been in a previous helicopter crash and almost drowned, so she decided she didn't want to wear a seatbelt anymore. And then I found her floating inside the cabin of the helicopter, and I took her up and handed her off. And then as they took them back and lifted them up onto the street, I went down and did a secondary search just in case. It's only a 2-seated helicopter, but maybe a civilian jumped in. But we always do a secondary search, so I did a secondary search, and then came up. And then I got up. I climbed the ladder and I went up onto the deck, and there was a couple of people from EMS that finally gotten there, but it was the companies. It was 54, 34, 21, and 4, and they are working on these people. And it's just, it's just that thing that you do everything you can. I mean, I know firefighters, at least the guys I work with, if you lose a civilian, you always say, "We lost somebody last night." And you didn't lose them, but you couldn't save them. So therefore, you kind of felt that you didn't get it. I'm looking at this, and it's the same old story, like, yeah, we do a lot of really cool stuff, but you can't save everybody. And then the officer of 54 engine turns and just yells, "He's breathing." And I just lost my shit right there. I just got so emotional and we talked about it the last time, because I reviewed my last time on here when we were talking a lot about tube socks.
Tube socks.
But I'm wearing
Chief Steve's coming.
I'm soaking wet in a wetsuit with white tube socks on, and I just start walking south because I'm so emotional. I don't know what to do. They don't need me. I'm done. My thing's over, And I just start going south, and I eventually call my wife on a payphone, and then this thing, it was a little snowball. It just got bigger because the dive thing worked. I mean, it captured people's imagination. Like Vinny Dunn said, it made him so proud. I think everybody there, I was so proud of every single guy that was in those pictures and was at that scene, because they all made it work. I was the guy that went underwater, but none of that would have happened without all those other guys. I'd still be there waiting to hand them off. It really is a whole teamwork kind of thing. And then to come back and watch this thing get better and better. And that's when the police started sending vans around with extra divers. Like it became this thing because we were successful.
Right.
And it for the next couple of years, we used to laugh. the safest people on the planet are anybody trying to commit suicide by jumping into a river in New York City. Because the odds are somebody's going to catch you before you hit the water. There was just so many divers, and it was crazy. It was wonderful. Yeah, it really was.
Didn't he send a Christmas card every year to the company? The pilot?
Yep.
Hey, right?
Yeah, I was looking through my scrapbook when I sent some of these pictures today, and I still have the handwritten letter from his 3 kids.
Really?
Thanking me for saving their father. The mother sent, I don't think you were working either. The mother sent over 2 cases of Maine lobsters to the firehouse. Well, we were off, but they said the lobsters were very good.
And the other guys ate them, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I wasn't part of that rescue, so
is he still alive today, Paul?
I believe he is. Last I heard, I ran into somebody several years ago that said that, oh, you're that guy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think he became a lawyer. God bless him. I know you don't want to fly helicopters.
I was going to say, he's flying
helicopters.
Yeah.
All right, Hanky, your turn, bro.
All right.
Which one do you want to
do? Let's do. I'll actually. We'll bring the volleys into this one, since Paul and I both, were founding members of the Freeport Fire Department Dive Squad. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 1990, in like August. I'm in my backyard. We're having a barbecue with a few 2 other couples are over, and it's a hot August night, and just enjoying the barbecue, and the tones go off for the dive squad. And I believe that the fire department they were out at it was like a Saturday night, I think. And that's a big parade night in the summer. So I think the department was at a parade, and it's usually a neighboring town or something, but they were out. And so
wait, Hank, you didn't go to the parade?
No, I had a barbecue that day. I must have not got points for my low sap or whatever, whatever. So tones come in. They say a report of a car in the water with a person in it at the Albany Avenue boat ramp down in the industrial park. So we had in Freeport, we had our own, you kept your own personal dive gear, and it was usually, in a big dive bag, and you had your weights and all this other stuff. So generally you kept it in your house or your garage. And when a call came in, you threw it in your car and off you went. So I used to keep my weight belt like in the trunk or in the back of the SUV. But I didn't want to carry the dive gear around in case, we could get robbed. So I'm in the back. I open the garage. I tell one of the guys, grab this. I grab my stuff, throw it in the car, and I say, see you later. And I shoot down to the Albany Avenue boat ramp. So when I get there, the cop car is there. The lights are on. There's a couple of witnesses. There's a guy who has his boat tied up to the dock where you put the boats in. And I get there, and there's another member of Freeport Truck. I don't even think he was a tender, but he had been to a drill. So he's helping me get my gear on, and I'm trying to get information. So what it turned out was this guy in the boat who had tied the boat to the dock and was getting ready to pull his car down. He said all of a sudden he heard like I guess when you hit a 4-barrel carburetor, you hit his, and he said he looks up and this car is flying down the ramp, hydroplanes, and shoots out into the water like 50 feet. Suicide. And so he starts the boat up, unties it, pulls up. No, that's the East River job. So he pulls his boat up, and he says that the front, the engine part of the car is down. He said there's a guy holding onto the steering wheel, and he's on the boat, and he's banging on the car window. The guy won't even look at him. And he says, and then the car goes down. So now here I am. So I come in and trying to get the location, like where the car is. He's telling me it's out about 50 feet. So I have a rope. I give it to the fireman standing on the dock. I said, just hold this end of this rope. And I swim out and I go down. And I think it was about 16 feet. And boom, I hit a car. And so it's kind of, I guess the bottom of that area might have had like a little dip in it. So because the car was on an angle. So, and the driver's side was on the downside. So I'm trying to open the door. I can't open the door, but we would carry center punch in our BC. So I take the center punch out, and this is kind of the reason I'm telling this story too. I like to make my little teaching points. So I figure, we've all used the center punch when we do a extrication drill. You hit the center punch, boom, window explodes, and you're in. Well, I take the center punch out, nothing. Can't get the window broken. It's not working. So later on, I thought about it, and I mean, maybe guys in the chat, maybe they had better luck with it, or I'm thinking because it's an equalization of pressure with water on both sides, it just wouldn't break. So now I come to the surface, and by now there's the rest, other guys from the department are responding, and I said, I need a tool. So they hand me a 6-foot hook from the top. So I go back down, and I don't know if you ever tried swinging anything underwater, but I'm trying to, and I can't get this, so I screw that. I come back up. Now they got the inflatable. I said, give me something. So they gave me they had a ball peen hammer. So I went down with the ball peen hammer. And I'm swinging it. I must have like a dozen times. Finally, boom, I break through the glass, and I reach in and I feel the guy, but I can't move him. He's too big. So I'm trying to get the door open, and it's kind of stuck in the mud. And with that, all of a sudden I feel an arm on my shoulder. So it ended up being, at the time, my brother-in-law John McGuire. He had come. He was a diver also. He followed my line down. So I put his hands on the door, and between the two of us, we were able to get the door open. So then once the door was open, I went into the car, got the guy, put my arm around him, and I inflated my BC, got him up, and swam as the boat, the inflatable was coming to meet me, and handed the guy to them in the inflatable, and they got him back to the shore. And long story short, they had him in the ambulance. They brought him back. Then on the way to the hospital, they lost him again. They brought him back in the hospital, and then they lost him, and then he ended up dying. So what it turned out, apparently the guy had lost his job. He was drinking, and he decided he was going to commit suicide and thought this was the way to do it. So the fact that it was warm water, the fact that he was drinking, all of those things were against him, any chance he had for survival. So, I mean, a couple of more minutes might have made a difference because they, like I said, they were able to bring him back and a couple of times, but it didn't have a happy ending. But, that's what you train for. And it's an exhausting, when you're done, you're just mentally drained, you're physically drained. And like I said, to me, for any diver out there, I don't know if you've had better luck, you can tell me in the chat, but I for me, after that, the center punch was not the way to go. I wanted to have
at least that center punch.
Yeah, at least that center punch.
Well,
Right?
he was trying to commit suicide, so he probably didn't have to worry about him being in the seatbelt, right? He probably didn't bother clipping his seatbelt in.
You probably would have keep him in there.
First.
I didn't have to cut a seatbelt. I did not.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but so that was one of the volley stories. But we had good equipment. Again, you got to remember, it was myself, there was Hash, there was Bruce Newberry. The three of us were all in truck company in Freeport, and we were all on the dive squad. And we had other good divers in that squad. We had like 2 or 3 really excellent divers. That were good, and we had and the tenders were very well trained. They were good. I mean, for that job, I didn't have a trained tender when like when Hash said he had to dive in. I was there by myself for a little bit because the department wasn't around. But they were all on their way back, and they got there fairly quickly. But you have to train. It's all black water, and you learn little things. Like I say, what works, what doesn't work, and let other people know. So that's how we pass information and learn.
Well,
I'll tell you, Hank.
I'm sorry, Gons. Go ahead.
I was just going to touch on the center punch while we were hit on it because somebody mentioned it in the chat and it reminded me of those spring-loaded center punches now seem to work best. I think our divers carry those as well than that Rescue Me one. And that old gold one that's like this thing, I don't like those at all. I don't think they have enough spring to them. But those spring-loaded ones that you can actually pull back and snap, they seem to work very well. Just about at any type.
Yeah, this was one where it had the spring in the handle, you know, and you would push it.
Yeah, you just snap it in there. But this one you actually pull it back. This is the one that I actually carry.
Okay, we'll see. Again, you know, we're talking. This was 32 years ago.
A while ago. Yeah,
you know,
that was the original one, the gold push thing.
Right. So
32 years.
All right, Hash. Whoa.
Yeah,
that's not my junior dude talking, is it?
No.
What I wanted to mention was the Dave
Rochelle
from Rescue 5's grabbed it. What was I'm looking over here? December of '87.
All right. So I was at that.
Me too.
So
yeah, you and I and Ray Brown were the divers that day from Rescue 1. We went to back them up.
Right. So
and it was just amazing that because I don't want to make it seem like Rescue 1's the only people doing anything. I know Rescue 3, a guy got a medal for doing a grab. For my time, for the things I've seen, probably one of the most difficult and challenging jobs was working on the home port. The Navy was building a pier there.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah, I'm agreeing.
Oh, okay.
And they were putting a giant pipe in or something, and a hard hat diver, the pipe unslung and fell on top of the diver.
Put the
and
picture
Rescue
up.
5 was the first guys there. Yeah.
That's
it's a drawing, Bob.
Bob, the drawing with the rescue with the
article
pipe coming down. It looks like he's in a shark's mouth from the newspaper.
Right. Well, that picture he just showed is me and Ray Brown walking, but I remember you were there too. But I think it was Dave and Barone. Mike Barone. Mike Barone was the other guy. Yeah.
From the article I have.
But Dave basically did most of the work. That was probably our most difficult and technical underwater rescue. At least in those days. I know there was one made a couple of years later, or fairly recently, by guys in Rescue 1 in the Mideast River, where the helicopter was. Yeah, I think Timmy O'Neill. The helicopter was going south, but this was really a challenging dive. I mean, they were down there so long, you have to start thinking about dive tables and everything.
Right. So that was a picture that was in the paper with me and Ray. Because weren't you the chauffeur that day, Hash?
Yeah.
So right. So so Ray and I had gotten dressed in the back. So this was us heading to the pier. And Serrato, I think was one of the guys running the operation or for the fire department.
You're right. Yep.
So this goes back to Darren's question, the RIT. Rescue 5 was first due because this was a Staten Island job. They were in the water and we were coming to back them up. Because I remember Ray and I were actually in the water as their backups. And going way back to the beginning when we started the podcast, when you were talking about how you felt, and it was like we felt comfortable because we fought fires. But I have said this on one of the podcasts before. This particular job was probably one of the times I was like most anxious as far as anxiety, because we had a lot of time to think about it, responding from Manhattan to Staten Island. And like you said, most of the dives we were doing, we were in 15, 20 feet of water, and it was you were trying to locate a car or something, or somebody that fell in. Here, we're getting reports. This is a commercial diver that's trapped. So here's a guy that spends his working day every day underwater, and this is what he does for a living. And now he's found himself trapped. And here we're coming in that, okay, we're good divers, for what we do. But now we're going into this, 50-foot or 55-foot dive with we don't know what's under there and how this guy got himself trapped. But I'm saying, I remember saying this they always say today could be the day. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I hope that this has a happy ending,
Yep.
And if you remember the way this went down was, and again, it was with the back and forth with the cops and stuff, but we were in the water. We had the divers there. So what they were going to do, because there was the crane on the barge, they the dive and the commercial diver was on surface air. So after some conversation, so he was on air and they knew he was okay down there, but he was pinned. And they knew that for the amount of time he was down there, that, you know, it could be a recompression dive and stuff.
Right.
They had to figure out how they were going to get him out of here. So they had Serato was up with the crane, and he had the radio, and he was talking to the crane operator and their the construction company's supervisor. And you know, we had the chiefs were on the pier, and everybody's with the handy talkies. But they decided that the Rescue 5 guys were going to sling this pipe from the crane. They were going to get a cable, and when everybody was ready, and this is when one of the days the communications was working, so it was good. You know, we were in the AGA full face pieces now and in dry suits. So when they had everything slung, they were going to say, "Okay, good to go." Serato was going to tell the crane guy, and he was supposed to just like feather this thing to try to get this pipe to move. And the guys from Rescue 5 were going to pull this guy out and get him to the surface. So it got to that point. Everything was slung. They say, "Okay, we're going to go." The crane, he starts feathering. As soon as he moved it, we had there was like a rush of air bubbles, like
bubbles,
jet engine under the water that came up, and they're like, "Stop, stop!" And so they thought they had severed the guy's airline. And at that point, if I don't remember, they told us the safety divers go. So Ray and I started swimming out to, because we're going to go surface and then down. And like 3 or 4 seconds later, the bubble stopped and they were able to communicate again. And so they said, "All right, everything's good. Everything's good." They called us back. What had happened was this caisson, I guess when they put it in, it has a cap and it had a lot of trapped air in it. And even though it was cut at the bottom, the water's pushing whatever air is trapped. When they pulled the pipe, I guess a lot of air, came out and shot to the top, and it made everybody think that this guy's airline was severed.
That was scary.
Once that was over, the guys from
not to panic.
It was the pucker time. But they got him to the surface. They got him in the ambulance, and then I don't know if Bob can find that picture. They actually got the picture of they're putting him into the hyperbaric chamber there. For recompression, and that had a happy ending. That story.
Yeah, that was amazing. That's why I wanted to mention that one too, because I remember you had the water view of it. I was standing next to Serato when that happened. When that air came up, it was everybody just froze for a second because I had never seen anything like that before.
Right.
And then once we figured it out, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, piece of cake. That little second, oh man.
I got to tell you, when they told me and Ray to go, I had the pucker factor at that point, because I'm saying not only do I got a commercial diver trap, now our guys might be in trouble, and here we go. It's like that's when you say
I got to stop you for 1 second. I'm going to say this. This is what makes this show worth every second of it. As you're telling the story, I am watching the complete joy on Hash's face. Like he's back at that moment and he's smiling. And I'm like, this guy is living this moment right now, bro. I swear, I could see the smile on your face. Like this guy, I got goosebumps. Like this guy is right. He's there right now, bro. It's amazing.
Kev, that was such a strong impression on me when it happened. And because it was that 1 second, I looked at Serato and Serato looked at me, and nobody knew what that was. And they're yelling to Hank and to Ray, go, go, go. And then all of a sudden it stopped, and the guys are going, no, they're good. But it was an unknown. I mean, we were good at diving. We had our confidence. We had all this. And then shit like that happens that you are not ready for. Mm-hmm. And it just is like, hey, stupid, you're not as good as you think you are. There's a lot of stuff going on here you don't know about. Yeah. And that was the thing to me going all the way back to the beginning where guys were saying, that diving is nothing to it. Yes, there is.
Yeah, man.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, I
really
swear to God, this episode here feels like I'm at the kitchen table more than maybe any other. Like I'm sitting at the kitchen table listening to senior guys tell the story, bro.
Well, it's
looking at
unique
his face, smiling, looking at him telling stories, and like, holy shit, man.
Yeah, Kev, we've said this before. If we could turn the clock back 35 years, we'd do it all over again. Knowing everything,
Who wouldn't, man? Who wouldn't, right?
Well, except for going through that floor. I wouldn't go through that floor.
Yeah. Great stuff. All right, so let's get back to where are we in the timeline? Where are we?
Well, I don't know. Hash, you got one? Or we can.
Hanky, for stories. I mean, there's been a bunch of really good grabs, but for stories, at the top of the Battle of the Badges, that one with Patty Brown was the boss.
Right. Okay. I didn't want to hog it. I mean, I was at that one too, so I don't know. You wanted to?
I was too.
So,
all right, let's go.
I thought that one again. You know, you're on the boat. You're on the boat, but I was on the land when that happened.
Were you the chauffeur again?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the problem with being a senior guy working. You were, you had to get the rig there, you know.
Bob,
bring in my part of the story too.
Bob,
here we go. Here we go, everybody.
There it is.
All right. So we get a report, and and obviously it's confirmed that there's a sightseeing helicopter down in the East River. And obviously it was occupied because somebody had to be flying it. And supposedly there were tourists that went down. So the reports were it was closer to the Queen side of the river. So we respond over the 59th Street Bridge, and not far from the bridge is the old Long Island loading pier or whatever there. It's now been, it's renovated as a park. We get there, and Paul's the chauffeur, Patty Brown's the officer. And if you look in the boat, that's the good-looking guy in the middle that's me.
I thought that was Burt Reynolds.
Well, it could have been Burt, but
that's been retouched. Wait a minute. Somebody airbrushed that.
Then there's Bruce Newberry's. You can see his side profile. So we're the two divers from one. The guy with the Rescue One with his back to us, that was Mikey Fitzgerald. Yep. He was tender that day. Rescue Two was the backup dive team, and it was Mike Penna and I think Gary Howard were the two divers. And I'm not sure with the big two on his back if that was Petey Martin or not. Maybe the guy, if there's somebody from two, maybe they remember if his burnout coat looked like that. But so this guy offers his boat. At that point, we haven't, we're not, we don't have the boat or anything. So he says, I can take you out there. So we're like, sure, Patty's ready. You can see we're all geared up and ready to go. And a station wagon, NYPD station wagon, pulls down the street before we can shove off. And this captain gets out and he's barking at us. And he's got, Patty goes up there and he goes, I'm in charge of the fire. Well, this is a police operation. It's a crime scene. I'm ordering you to not go in the water. So he says, you got a helicopter down. I got divers here ready to go. So he says, we got guys in the water. Well, they did. They had two guys in the water. Well, but they were in the Gumby suits. They weren't divers. They had surface. They had cold water exposure.
Good luck getting under.
Right. Yeah. So there's the back and forth. Now there's people around. Now the people are yelling like, "Why aren't you diving?" And everything. We're saying because the police are ordering us. We can't dive. And this went on, and it became a big thing. But the bottom line was we would not. Go ahead. Do you want to interject, Hash?
Yeah, you guys go out in that boat. You're just offshore. He's yelling at you and everything, and back and forth. I'm standing on shore with Jack Theobald, and I'm wearing a dive suit. But because I was going to be like a backup or a later diver, I didn't zip it. So on the back, you see Rescue One sticking through. So we're standing there watching this guy yell at you. And a reporter comes over to me from one of the TV stations. And he goes, aren't you the guy that rescued the people from the other helicopters? I said, yes, I am. He goes, well, why aren't you in the water? I said, well, the police department's not allowing us to go into the water.
Good answer.
And he goes, well, why? I said, you have to ask them. I have no idea. Well, can you find them? I said, I don't know if I can find them, but I can't find them standing here. I know that. This guy beat feets it. We get virtually handcuffed for the whole thing, but this guy goes back and puts it on the radio. boom. Now it's
Right.
headline news. It's television interviews.
WNBC.
Oh,
Well, I have that article there. I have, where is it? Right here from my scrapbook. And can I take a minute and a half to read this?
Go ahead, bro.
All right. So,
You need
so
a refill there,
Vegas
Mr.
walkway.
Hashagen.
And now again, I know you've had the shows and everything. Everybody's, there's a big group hug now, and it's as it should be. But back then, it wasn't like that. Okay, people were dying, and this stupid crap like this was going on. So the feud between cops and firefighters erupted again yesterday, and this time a life may have hung in the balance. Scuba trained firefighters complained they were kept out of the rescue effort in the East River helicopter crash, which failed to save the life of Japanese businessman Takashi Oyama on Sunday. There were only 2 police divers here for 20 minutes, claimed Fire Lieutenant Patrick Brown. I had 8 guys dressed and ready to go. They had 2 guys in the water. That's like searching for a needle in a haystack. Brown's claim was backed up by John Martelli, an insurance broker whose pleasure boat was used to carry both cops and firefighters close to the crash site. There was a person drowning. They had 2 police officers in the water at that point, Martelli said. They could have had 8 to 12 divers from the fire department in the water at the same time. They were quarreling about it, and someone was drowning. We were there, and our feeling is if resources are available, they should be utilized, Fire Department Commissioner Joe Bruno said. I don't know what the end result would have been had we put our 8 additional divers in. Bruno also noted the search zone near the 34th Street heliport was a very large area. Our people could clearly have taken a certain area and assisted. But Police Commissioner Ben Ward said the rescue went by the book in accordance with Mayor Koch's directive that police are in charge of all non-fire emergencies. He also disagreed with Bruno about the size of the rescue area, noting a maximum of 5 scuba cops were allowed in the water at one time. Under the circumstances, additional divers in the water would have been dangerous and unproductive, Ward said.
Sure.
Oyama, who was trapped by his safety belt 35 feet underwater, died at Bellevue Hospital 9 hours after he was rescued. The cops' role in the rescue was criminal, said Angry Fire Union President Nick Mancuso. It was a disservice to the city, he said, claiming the cops deliberately prevented the firefighters from entering the water. So that was, when the Battle of the Badges was going on. And like you said, we had plenty of trained guys there that, could have made a difference, especially in the East River. You're looking for a helicopter. It's not, it is a needle in a haystack, but the more divers in, the bigger that needle gets. So in this case, it potentially cost this guy his life. So,
So now the back part of that too is once it starts getting out onto the air, except for the original things that Patty said, nothing was being said. And then somehow somebody from, I think, a radio station got Patty Brown to make a statement. And something along the lines of, this has to be worked out. And if the mayor wants to sit down and talk about it, we'll talk about it. Okay. And I might be crossing wires on incidents, but I think this is the same incident because we had a whole bunch of them. And because Patty talked to the media without permission, he gets lifted. And they send him to the fireboats. And you remember Penny Crone?
Yeah, man, she loved
Channel 5.
Right? Yeah.
The reporter from Channel 5. She was coming by Rescue 1 every single night. It was like, where's Waldo? It was, where's Patty? Where's Patty Brown? And she was there night after night, beating the drum for us that this is ridiculous and all the rest of it. And I think in the long run, things got a little better. It loosened up a little bit, but it just showed people how ridiculous the whole thing was. Yeah. Because Patty was just doing what he thought was right. And I remember he came over to me and he's saying, should I go talk to the media? And I said, I don't think you're going to win on it. And he won in the long run, but he lost in the short run because they lifted him. But in the long run, it helped. And he came back and he was around for Kevin Shea's rope rescue and all the rest of it. But that's just how stupid it was. And it was unfortunate because the cops just wanted to do the right thing. The average cop, they just wanted to go help somebody just like we did. Most of the time we got along. Sometimes we didn't. The difference is they could arrest you and we couldn't arrest them. That was the only difference. But by and large, except for those crazy things, it was whoever got there first, really. It was silly.
Hank, I don't want to get off the topics too far, but weren't we having a conversation one time about what they would do to try to provoke you, the cops at times, the ESU guys?
Yeah.
Like what? Like step on your shoe or feet or something?
Yeah, it was a night tour in one. Captain O'Flaherty was working. We were coming back from a job, and we got a run for a pin job of a police car pin job in front of the Port Authority building on 42nd Street.
I was with you.
Right. So we get there, and we start the extrication. And a short time after we start, an unmarked car shows up, and this, I guess he was a detective or an unmarked, he was a plain clothes guy or whatever. He took offense to the fact that we were cutting one of their guys out of the car. And I said, well, who else is going to do it? The ESU wasn't on the scene. We picked it up like 2 blocks at like 2 in the morning, So basically, at that point, I was a gopher guy, getting because you had different assignments. So I would go back to the rig and get whatever. All right, what do you need next? Your jaws, to this, to that, and basically on the perimeter of this operation, this guy like gets in my face, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's Midtown Manhattan. So, you got a couple of hundred bystanders watching this. He basically got so close to me. And as he did, he subtly was stepping on my foot. I had the boots on, so it wasn't like hurting me, but he's stepping on my foot. And when he's talking, he's spitting in my face. And the whole idea was, by him doing that, now I'm going to shove him. And what does everybody see? It sees the firefighter shoving the cop. But because of this was nothing new to me. At that point. You knew that they were going to bait you into something. So I just I backed away from the guy. I went to Captain O'Flaherty, and basically kind of unprofessional, but I was pissed off. And I said, Cap, this guy can die in his car. I don't give a shit. And I went by the rig. And, later he was like, what was the problem? And I told him, and then, he was talking to the police commander, but it basically went nowhere. But
it went nowhere. That guy was not a detective. That guy was an off-duty sergeant from ESU.
Oh, okay.
And I tell you what, Hank, I worked with you so much. That was the most restraint I have ever seen you do.
I thought the charging bull was going to come out.
It was my proudest moment for you. That guy stood on your foot, and you put your hands in your pockets, and I went, we win.
Because once he starts to, and he starts going like this, stay back. He's going to charge. Yeah.
All right. But yeah, again, it's like we're opening up old wounds here, where it's a kinder, gentler department now with everybody.
A kumbaya, bro. Everybody goes off to their space.
And you know what? Unfortunately, what did it take? It took 9/11 to happen for everybody to come together and decide that everybody was going to be able to communicate with each other and play nice in the sandbox, and and do the right thing for the public that we're paid to protect. But take the egos out of it. And
I'm going to call bullshit on that, because I have a story that's post 9/11. Okay.
All right. I'm trying to make it nice.
I got to tell a story. So we get a run, right?
You're going off script
to
here,
a man under the train, right down on Rush Street. You know where the freight trains come through, right? We respond there. We get there. Sure enough, there's a guy whose arm is severed. He's so drunk he didn't even know his arm is severed. He's waving his fucking stump around, right? So Evan says to me, I see ESU coming in, block the thing with the rig. So I blocked the space off with the rig, so they can't even get in the gate to go into the fucking thing. So they're standing out there now, and I'm just standing out there, and I hear this guy say, I swear to God, I swear to my kids, That's why over 300 of these fucking assholes died in that building.
Ooh.
Like, what? All right. Nope. Just like Hank, I'm like, I ain't biting, bro. Nope. I just walked away, man, because that's what they want. They want to throw something inflammatory at you so you could, do something and then whatever. But
these things happen.
They do. Yep. All right, let's get back to rescue diving. Where are we on the script, Paul?
I have no idea. Yeah, total railroaded. I lost it a while ago too.
Well, the next one up that Paul put was when we got mutual aid at the Hoboken.
All right.
So again, were you the chauffeur again?
No, I didn't go to that one.
All right. We get a run in quarters, and it's a mutual aid to Hoboken, and we're like, what? It's for a dive job. At that time, they didn't have a dive team, and it was just on the other side of the river. So we respond, and there's a huge reservoir, like, a city block reservoir with a couple of pump stations in it or whatever. And they tell us that, I think there was a car in the water or something. And so myself and Neil Fredrickson were the divers, and we went in, and I believe we found the car, searched the car. There was nobody in it. And we ended up just, they gave us a cable for a tow truck. We cabled up the car. They pulled the car out. And that was pretty much the end of it. But I think that was the first time, I don't know, Hash, you would know as the historian. Was that the first time that the fire department got mutual aided for a dive call?
One of the first, yeah.
So.
Yeah, we went over there. When Jimmy Rogers was captain, we went over for a pier fire. They had been fighting this pier fire for a couple days, and we went in and just did the last mop up under the pier. But the cool thing was they had their ladies auxiliary or whoever, and they had like a barbecue going. And I was begging the captain, can we get hamburgers? I never went to an emergency that was catered before. Look at this.
Wow, our rack unit should carry that, bro. Hamburgers
it was great. That fire department was there a couple of days, so that was smart. They set themselves up, and it was cool. The only other one that strikes me, the Flight 800 is a really long and complicated story. But the one that I really liked was the pier fire. Let me look at when the date was. I have the little list here. Because we went to the Flight 5050 crash and went in the water. It turned more into water emergencies and stuff, but I can't even find it right off the bat.
50-50. What was that? Sully?
No. Sully's odds were way better than 50-50. What are you kidding? I'll find it. 1 second. I just want to get the date,
bro.
For anybody that's looking to do it at home.
Well,
which one?
Okay, it was 1993, June 13th. I'm driving. We had a covering captain, Sean Reen, who was in my Proby class. And we get a call for a pier fire. So out we go. And we go down to 57th Street and the Hudson River. And you turn the corner, it's in the sky. I mean, it's thick, ugly black smoke, and it's chugging. And we get down there, and it's a long sanitation pier right about where 12th Avenue goes up the hill, and it turns into the Henry Hudson Parkway and all the rest of it. So they got a major fire under the pier. And go down. Al Torrey's the chief of the 9th Battalion. And now Sean's a great captain, but he doesn't know what we can do. So I said, Cap, we can make a difference at this fire. Let me talk to the chief. And he said, sure. So I run over to the chief. And Al Torrey had been the captain of 34 Engine. He was a South Bronx fireman back in the heyday. Another super duper guy. And I said, Chief, we can jump in the water, take hoses, and put this fire out. And he goes, yeah? I said, yeah. Okay. So me, Bruce, and Harvey Harrell get dressed and jump in the water. And they start giving us hoses, and we're going to go under to put it out. Meanwhile, if you remember Pete Lorenzo from 23 Engine,
Yeah.
the lieutenant, he had this contraption, the Lorenzo ladder, which I thought was a brilliant idea for high-rise fires. If you can get a window out, you can put a ladder out perpendicular. He was trying to use it inverted to put a nozzle on it to shoot under the pier. And it was working for the first 20 feet, and then there was a whole concrete screen in the way. So the water couldn't get past that. So Pete is just begging me, no, I'll get it to work. Said, Pete, it's never going to get there. We got this. So we go under. And if you see that one picture of us in the water with the hose line, we used to take a straight stream nozzle right behind the where the nozzle attaches to the hose. We took a hose strap, looped it around there. You could pass it around and take the hook and go back on to the hose. And now you were tethered to whatever it is that is the substantial object. Because if you try to open up a charged hose line, you're going sledding in the water.
I was going to tell you to bring that up.
Yeah. So we go underneath there. And it took us about 45 minutes. It's some of the hardest work I ever did because it's really hard working in the water. But we put that fire out. And we saved 50 brand new garbage trucks at $500,000 a piece.
City owed you big, Paul.
$25 million we saved in an hour. Bruce, me, and Harvey Harrell. And Vinny Dunn was jumping up and down. He was so happy. He thought it was going to be another one of these week-long fires, millions of dollars into the river, creosote smoke all over Midtown Manhattan, and the thing went out. So he sends us in for a unit citation, and they gong it. He rewrites it and goes down to the Board of Merit and pleads our case. And we got a unit citation. And to me, that just showed the kind of chief that Vinny is. But realistically, that's a good day's work. And I don't care what fire department you are. You save that much money for your city. Man, they ain't paying me nothing like that.
Protect life and property, bro. Property.
You know, and that was just a wonderful job. Lorenzo's ladder was a wonderful thing. It didn't work in that, opportunity.
Right.
But there was a thing. This is why we were started. And then we turned around and did that job. 3 guys in the water made the difference when nobody else could do it. Because they're working their ass off. They're trying to cut the pier apart underneath. They got cellar pipes and distributor nozzles, and nothing's working. 3 knuckleheads with a hose underneath put the fire out.
I'll bet you that $25 million is more they save than what they spend on this whole scuba unit, bro.
Without a doubt. And then Rescue One did it years later at the Chelsea Piers. They had another major fire under Chelsea Piers.
So they got their money's worth, Paul.
They went down and put that fire out too. And there was TV recording studios upstairs and all sorts of game things. And the Chelsea Pier is a big giant thing. That would, without the underwater divers, that's another thing would have burned into the river.
Right.
John Norman had put up before. He said, "Paul, tell him about the under-pier rescues at the 50-50 flight or something."
They're clamoring for it.
All right, I hate to keep banging on the cops, but we'll get it one more time.
Kick it dog while he's down.
This is a good story, though. It's true.
All right.
We get sent to the flight 50-50 crash. Plane goes off the end of the runway at LaGuardia Airport into the drink. They have these big pilings that come up that are all nested together. They're called dolphins. So the nose of the plane's on that, and then the plane's out, and it snaps in half, and it's slowly sinking. So we get there, Rescue 3's in the plane. Like, there's unbelievable rescue work going on in the plane, in the water, everywhere. I mean, and it's lit like a movie scene. When we pulled up, it was the most startling thing I ever saw. So I go down this straight ladder, scary as hell, even get down this ladder into the water, get all my scuba equipment, and I'm going to go over and work on the plane. That was my theory. And I hear screaming from under the pier that there's people that need help. Say, all right. So I'm yelling back, all right, we'll be there in a minute. And I keep looking, they're screaming and screaming. Shut up, we'll be there in a second. So I look up, and Lee Ielpi from Rescue 2 is above me, and I said, I got people under the pier. Do you have anything that floats up there? So the Switlick, you remember the old Switlick, Hanky?
Yeah.
They got this big, giant, like double suitcase thing that's made by a parachute company that turns into a floatable raft. and all the rest. And the drill was, this is how it works, but don't do it because we can't afford to repack it. So you never got to pull the thing, you never got to do it, but you looked at it all the time.
Right.
So now this thing comes down, it lands on top of me, and I pull the cord, and boom, turns into this big giant raft.
It's a floating island.
What I forgot is there are sea anchors. So there's this nylon ropes with these little parachutes on the end to keep it from getting blown across the water. Now they're all entangling me. So I'm cutting a friggin' knife and trying to get this, and they're still screaming like little babies underneath. So I drag this thing in, and I get there, and in the dark, I'm trying to work my light and stay afloat and carry this raft in. And I look up, and it's a cop. And he's clinging to the pilings, frozen. He's freezing his ass off. He's in his uniform.
Screaming like a little girl?
With his gun. He jumped in the water with his gun on. At least that's how I remember it. I don't know. So I get him off, I get his partner off, and I turn, and here's John Norman, who's the lieutenant from Rescue 2. He's yelling at them. We're yelling, whatever. We get him. We go out. Rescue 2 had gotten a Boston whaler from somewhere. So me and John walk him out or swim him out. We get him. We get onto the Boston whaler, and we're starting to come back to bring them in. And this one poor cop sitting there, he's looking at me, and he goes, he's looking at the rubber dry suit, and he goes, "You're not Harbor, no. You're not PD, no. You're fire?" I said, "Worse. You're rescue?" I said, "Yes." This guy just went, "Oh no!"
You tell him, I swear, I won't tell anybody you was screaming like a 5-year-old girl. I swear.
So we get them in. We do all it. Meanwhile, anybody out there, you want to read those stories? The stuff that was done inside that plane is absolutely spectacular. Great rescues all around.
Right, Merthyr and a few of those guys.
Merthyr and Chris Blackwell. Amazing rescues. I guess it's about 9 months later, I'm driving the truck in Manhattan, and I stop at a light, and a guy jumps up on the running board, and it's that cop in uniform.
On.
And he goes, "I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to tell you that exactly what I thought was going to happen, happened." And I said, "Watch that."
Became a fireman.
Well, I had been in the first fire department calendar that they put out in dive gear because I was a little notorious from those helicopter things. So it wasn't like a cheesecake thing. I'm wearing a dry suit, but the guys in the police station put my picture on his locker. And every time he pulled it off, they put a new one on.
Oh, well,
so he just left it there. He says, "I've been staring at your face for the past 9 months." And I took a picture with him. It was really cool. It was a good day.
Great story,
but they're doing the right thing. They're jumping in the water trying to help people, but the current just took them away.
Yeah. That's a great story. You have to tell that story, bro.
That was fun. And if he's out there, God bless you, brother. Forget your name, but good job.
Hey, Dave out there. Listen, I paid the bill. It's just the
it's just
come on, reboot. There he goes.
Listen, it's getting a little late. So before we go, I know I didn't ask you guys, but let's do some kind of old school tip of the day. Each one of you give a little rescue dive tip that we can pass on to the fellas out there. So we'll let you go, Hank, before you're into that shit's the bed again.
Yeah, well, and listen, we did good up to now. All right, it's up. All right, you just threw this on me. I didn't really think of it, but look, it goes back to what we've said in the past. Number one, you can't learn enough about a job that can kill you. So if diving happens to be one of the skills or duties that you're going to be doing in your department, training is a big part of it. You can't expect to just let the gear sit on the rig, never train with it, and then the call comes in and you're fooling yourself if you think you're going to be able to perform the way you should. So just like any other task we have in the fire department, know your gear, train with your gear, make sure your tenders are trained, and when the time comes, it's a dangerous operation, but you should be able to perform at your maximum ability and hopefully have a happy ending. That's it.
I like that. Listen, you know what Rob wrote? To get a better center punch.
Yeah.
All right, Paul.
I got one real quick one.
Go.
We had a dive in the volunteers, and Donald Mausberg, who was a former chief and frequent captain of truck company and one of the senior men, and he helped us get the dive team started. And he wasn't going to go in the water, but he listened. He listened to the plan. We kind of set up Freeport as close as we could to the New York City style, but certainly it was different. But when we talked to the tenders and we talked to the first due people, the most important thing is when you get your witness, bring them back to the spot where they were standing when they saw the thing happen. Because there's always going to be a certain amount of distance that's going to be wrong or a certain angle that's going to be wrong. But if they're not standing where they were, if they're standing 50 feet away or 100 feet away, everything changes. We had this operation where the guy was frantic. His wife and his child were underwater. And when the people pull up, this guy's screaming and yelling, and they told him to go home. He's the only guy who knew where those people were. Other divers were trying to find him. They couldn't find him. This guy finally comes back despite being told to go home. And Donald Mausberger sees him and walks over and he goes, just had the feeling that this man knew something. He started talking to him, realized that this is the father of the people that are missing. And he tells the man, after listening to the training that we had gotten, go show me where you were when they went down. And he's standing there. And then we go over to that spot and you look down on the ground and his little kid's sneakers right there. Me and Frankie Fee go in the water and we find both of them in 5 minutes. And it was all Donald Mausberg who put us on the right spot all the way back to the beginning of the training. Bring the eyewitness to the spot where they were to show you where to go. There you go.
Excellent. Guys,
Excellent. Those are great.
Great show, man. Great show. Thanks for coming on. Really. Excellent. Excellent.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And if you love Hank, we have Hank on Thursday night again. This time, though, with Chief Norman. And we will be discussing Collapse Rescue. So we will leave the open invite for any time Paul wants to grace us with his presence. I had a great time. And it looks like he had a pretty good time, too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Nice meeting you, Gons.
Pleasure doing the show.
Right back at you, my friend. Right back at you next time.
Hank, we got to plan the St. Patty's Day parade down in Florida for the Gettin Salty. So we'll talk about it. We'll post something up here.
Okay.
Ruffy's back on Thursday night. We're easing Gonzo in. We don't want to bust his cherry too quick, so we got to ease him in. Just a tip, just for a few minutes. You know what I'm saying?
It's a tip. It's a little game we like to play.
Yeah. So, all right. So you know where to find us: GettinSaltyApparel.com. If you want to find any swag, check out the Facebook on the Gettin Salty fans page. It's not ours, but there's over 50,000 maniacs on that page, and we'll try to corral Mr. Hashagen back on. It's a great time. You'll have Hank back on Thursday night. Ruffy will be back on Thursday night. Appreciate it. Producer Bob, thank you. Oh, and the book. Yep, 100
Buy
years
books, kids.
of
Buy
Valor.
books.
Yes, and Paul is actually part of the new playing cards. He drew the playing cards. We got 10,000 packs coming. We got the chips coming. We got the whole kit and caboodle. They'll be coming soon.
I want playing cards. I didn't know you had playing cards coming.
I don't have them yet. I don't have them yet.
Want to bet?
Dude, you know anything you want, you got for free. You know.
All right. Well, I'd like to see a pack of cards at my doorstep soon. Thank you.
I'll bring them with me. Here they are right here. Look.
All right.
There you go.
That's like, listen, that's a double win for me because my buddy, Mr. Hashagen, is the artist, and I'm going to get him for free from you. Well, not the fact that Louis is going to have to approve it, you know.
Oh, well, he's not. Don't tell Louis I'm giving him for free.
Okay.
Welcome to work.
Well,
He'll be back on Thursday. Don't mention it on Thursday.
Well, listen, if you want me back on Thursday, I want to know the cards are coming. That's the way I'm playing.
Hank, I'm not getting you the cards. I'm not. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, guys. I had a great time tonight.
Right.
We'll see you.
Good night, nation. Be safe.
Where do you get those books, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say, Paul, you get those books? Will you have them on Amazon?
PaulHashagen.com.
Okay,
that's easy. PaulHashagen.com. Excellent.
Can you hook that up, Mr. Producer Bob?
And I must say it is a great book. If you like fire history, that is a great book. I have one signed by the author.
There's got to be a picture of you in it somewhere. It
Oh,
has to be.
There's a
I
couple.
know it. I know it. Great book, great.
Don't be a hater.
I'm not
Don't be a hater.
Don't hate me because you hate me. I am not, bro. I could never be either one of you guys. Could never fill those shoes. I appreciate you guys coming on.
Sure.
All right, guys. Just make room in the spare room for me in March when I come down.
All right.
All right.
I got the garage carpet.
My!
What is that?
Look at that.
Oh, man.
Look at that guy. Get that book. Paul, you'll even sign them, right? When people order them?
I sign them, sure.
Giddy up, bro.
There you go.
I know he wants.
All
We
right,
got to
kids.
get him back on the show. All right, guys.
Be
Stay
safe
low and
out
go.
there.
We'll see you on Thursday night.
All
Check
right.
it out, Bob.
Good night.